Hi folks, it's Adrian Zunchik, CMT Charter Market Ignition. This is a brief video chart analysis for Bitcoin against US dollar and daily Bitstamp exchange. And well, what seems to be very transparent and evident is that we continue to move in a sideways-oriented, horizontal themed type of a movement, right? While the long-term tendency, predominant prevailing tendency of the market seems to be upward looking, right? Defined by the 200-day moving average, which is climbing higher with the key support level at around 54 300s approximately again. It tends to work often as a support or resistance level due to the magical thinking of us, taking those round numbers, taking the actual averages in a magical thinking manner, in a magical way, when we expect it to have some magical powers. And hence, as a result, we tend to overlay those regions with the orders, with the resting orders, with the buy orders, basically coming in, also creating this order clustering phenomenon and creating initial opposing force for the market whenever it dumps, basically to face this counter power coming in. And besides, we are moving in a flat 50-day medium momentum with a RSI slightly hovering above at 51, 52 points, which is neutral to say the best. However, it's fluctuating in the lower range of the entire momentum spectrum over the last weeks and months, which tells me that on the daily basis, well, it's not necessarily the most constructive thing. It's sideways. It's what typically a quarter three price action kind of like may look like ultimately. Well, we also see falling tendency on the volatility side. The 50-day volatility trend by ATR continues to decline, with an actual volatility at 2400s down from 4000s, down from 4100s, if you will, even, right? So quite a big diminishing move right there. And as long as the volatility continues to slump, the trend is more likely to oscillate in a choppy range type of situation, again, without any constructive price action persisting in any direction in particular. So we seem to be favoring those long-term upward trend, the bull market, while the medium-term tendency of the markets has switched to more sideways to consolidation, and until it actually gets a positive breakout above 7400s or under 5600s, 5700s, I would say that we continue to move and chop around, and potentially, just maybe there is this, like I said, 200-day moving average, which may often work as a support or resistance level. So if that happens, that market's dump and it cross below 5600s, this immediate support surge may happen to be around 54,000s. Otherwise, July and June ahead seem to be fairly constructive and positive. They are not the strongest ones because they are a little bit like a last breeze, coming before the summertime and typically lower volumes on the market, with almost 5%, 4.94% from June returns. So June is positive basically 61% of the time, and the typical average return to be expected is about 5%. So let's take it as it goes. And this is a little bit of a different perspective to give you a little bit of food for thought, right? Also, daily chart Bitstamp, although it's not a 200-day simple moving average, is actually the custom-made Bearbeater Pro trend line, indicating right now the more imminent support at $63,000. $63,000. It happens to be far less distant than 53,400s, if you will, right? Which is somewhere over here. That can work as a little bit less of an imminent support. Still, we can expect that whenever we see a little bit of a slump there from the 66,000 is kind of like a shelf, it may happen to search for this immediate bounce and an opposing force, at least based on a fair price of Bitcoin and a more recently based situation for Bitcoin at $63,000. So even though there has been overthrow on the bottom, and we know that the failed patterns tend to perform better in the opposite direction, right? So whenever there is a pattern for a breakout and it actually collapses and it fades, there is a chance that is inverted kind of like a pattern actually creates some sort of like inverse on the shoulders, if you will. Right? It doesn't even matter much what we name and frame this pattern, because what matters is that typically the failed patterns tend to perform better in the opposite direction, which in this particular case actually creates some sort of like an inverse on the shoulders. And it seems to be happening that we see this break outside of it, a little bit of a slowdown, which is considered a breakout retest phase. However, like I said, the main local medium-term context is sideways oriented between 56,000 and 74,000. And until or unless we see a major massive breakout through and beyond those frames, those levels, I would expect the market to be a little bit more choppy instead, right? And this chop doesn't necessarily bring anything constructive based on a Dow theory basis for the market to continue in the direction based on a trending environment. We're not trending, we're moving sideways. Still, long-term solution is to the upside. The long-term trend is to the upside. This is a predominant tendency of the market to go up, to go higher with a local medium term sideways pattern oriented. And there this sideways chop in between 74 and 56 seems to be, like I said, complex with a lot of subsequent patterns such as this inverse head and shoulders, maybe a little bit of a descending triangle or a pennant, if you will, locally after following this breakout pole. We'll see. What I'm trying to say is that there are not many things about Bitcoin looking right now, also accounting by the entire crypto industry. With the percentage of crypto assets above their 200-day moving 20-day moving average, which represents the short-term breadth of the market, 50-day moving average positioning against the coins. That basically translates to medium-term breadth and a long-term breadth against 200-day moving average. And what we can say and see is that there is a little bit of a decent uptick lately, from from back to 2 weeks ago, from about 10%, right, to the negative, all the way to 70%. So there is a decent spike. However, we are still oscillating at around 50% of the coins being above their 20-day moving averages, above their short-term trends, representing the short-term bullishness in the market. Otherwise, 40% only of the coins are above their respective 50-day moving average, trade telling us that the 40% of the market is above the 50-day trends, and 40% of the market is bullish on the technical side for the medium-term perspective. However, 60% of the coins are actually bearish. And on the long-term perspective, the long-term setup for the breadth, we're talking about 35% of the breadth for the market to be bullish above their representative 200-day moving average, the predominant bull market or bear market line, telling you that 60%, 65% of the assets of the coins are below the averages, are below the long-term trend, which means they are kind of like trending down the least short-term, but it's not necessarily the most constructive setup. So all this takes us to another consideration that the price action is very nicely and well backed by the slowed and diminished breadth conditions. The breadth conditions are not particularly bullish. There is not much buying power. There is not much steam in this vehicle basically to take us any further and any higher right now anytime soon. Still, which even though there is this long-term tendency of the market to go up, the long-term bull market is on. This local sideways needs some stronger push, right? That would build up the volatility, that would build up the momentum. Otherwise, we are just kind of like chopping around and just crawling a little bit lower, a little bit higher, but that's still crawling within a choppy sideways. This one instead takes us to the 12-hour time frame, which is the tradable time frame for me personally, with the BPRO current time frame trailer and the high time frame trailer set up with a thick line representing the high time frame trailer situation, while an actual medium-term, short-term perspective on the 12-hour time frame, daily versus 12 hours, basically shown over here. Both of the time frames are actually bullish, right? Indicated by the BPRO current time frame trailer being bullish ever since the breakout, basically above 64,500 approximately, and the daily high time frame trailer breakout happened soon after, basically putting us right now with the key support at around 6400s, now 64,000 and 67,000 being present for a more imminent support. That seems to be breached just a little bit right now. I think I just got a notification about my positions getting stopped. Even though it was a small position with a tiny percentage loss risked basically on the account, it's still there. It's fluctuating. Like I said, there's not much constructive price action. It's just taking just a little bit of couple of bites, from right there from the lows. So that here as well, right? So there's a lot of those kind of like chaotic breaches of this support resistance levels, those bring a lot of uncertainty. Those bring those more or less random kind of like position stop outs, which is what happened right now. And yet still the market typically after this quiet period of chop of more or less random situation, it tends to go back to the predominant tendencies. So luckily, both of the indicators of both our daily and the mid-daily time frame seem to be bullish. However, like I said, I'll take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, since the other technical indicators are not necessarily the most constructive and rather indicating and pointing us towards sideways resolutions. Another way to put it is by the 12-hour or 4-hour chart perspective given by the gauges of the momentum bands, the low momentum band and the low and the high BPRO band, basically representing this actual oscillation to be happening within the regular fixed volatility frames, right? We actually see that 64, 65, 700, 66, 300 seems to be the potential support region, while the potential resistance region supply actually is positioned at around 60, 70,000, 70,500. And well, anything that happens in between basically is rather doomed for those more or less choppy oscillations without much constructive approach and resolution. And as long as that happens, as long as we stay within those volatility bands, those momentum bands by BPRO, actually there is not much spectacular firework type of price action or breakout. We rather go slowly and then smoothly just juggling between those frames, right, in a more or less not constructive sideways choppy oscillations. So for a massive breakout to the upside, we need to see a break above 71,000 or best 70,600s or below, at least for the short-term signal, below 65,500. If that happens and there's a decent daily close above this threshold or below the support, there's a chance for the market to continue in that direction, at least for a little longer. This one's going to be a quick health check of the Ethereum against dollar chart on a daily Coinbase overlay with a 200-day BPRO trend line being giving us more immediate support at 3200s after this massive 20% push in a day, anticipating this massive ETF approval news, which basically happened to mark the local peak at around $4,000. Ever since, we continue to kind of like slump and chop around between the lows of the ETF approval day of 3,500 and the highs of almost $4,000, still not breaking above this overall yearly high in mid-March, going as high as 4,100s. So there's been a period of a quieter, more silent environment, with consolidation, with condensation, with not much price action going on. Otherwise, fairly similar chart to Bitcoin, although there is a relative weakness, right? As we tend to observe that Bitcoin is oscillating, well higher than Ethereum is in the correspondence with the actual all-time highs before, with Ethereum being placed at around 4,800s from 2021, while 4,100s is still right here for the yearly highs. And the yearly highs for Bitcoin is actually 74,000, right? There's a new all-time high for Bitcoin. There's not new all-time high for Ethereum, and we're actually at quite a distant situation from the all-time high. So there's relative weakness, right? And even though Ethereum does seem to be doing very well, like I said, the 200-day trend is slightly curving up. However, it's a lot of sideways orientation. It's a lot of sideways tendency for the market, right? It's not constructive. Again, it's more like whenever you see a slowdown of a massive upward trend, that it is the case for the past 2 months. The markets tend to oscillate, kind of like bouncing back and forth between the layers of clustered orders of the buys and sells, the buy walls and sell walls, kind of like taking them little by little, just digesting those regions until it actually one side appears to be stronger, the demand appears stronger for an upward breakout, or supply side remains stronger for the downward breakout. Until that happens, the trends are not particularly constructive. On the medium-term basis, the long-term basis is a little bit bullish. However, like I said, it's less bullish than Bitcoin. And we continue to move around in the upper range of this 4,100 yearly highs. Now, let's see what it gives. Ethereum ETF approval gave a decent boost. However, it's still so far too little to break us higher. Here is a brief shout out to our partners at CREDify with their token CREDI, basically right now holding up key support level defined by the 200-day BPRO trend line at the more time recent sensitive data, averaging us at a fair price of the token at 0.025 at about 2.5 cents. And as long as that's the case, we continue to kind of like move a little bit higher. However, the things are still maintained with a bearish setup. The bearish trend setup by the daily time frame, by the high time frame trailer, is right now giving us resistance at 0.032, with 3.2 cents approximately right now being the key resistance. And as long as that doesn't get broken anytime soon, we are kind of like moving closer and closer to this potential invisible apex and a potential breakout, right? Being pressed in the higher low sequence, from the bottom, supported by the 200-day BPRO trend line, also even above, hovering above, well above 200-day simple moving average with a key support at 0.016. Still, the resistance remains unbroken just yet. And if that's the case, like I said, there is a chance that we continue to consolidate and decrease the oscillations basically until a major massive burst of the breakout comes up, right? And if that's the case, if it's to the upside about 32.032, I would expect the continuation of this predominant bull market tendency, going hard, taking us into somewhat of a decent summer rally potential candidate. Although, like I said, it's the bearish BPRO trendline tendency remains flat and unchanged ever since the beginning of May, basically, right? So we are in a little bit of a pressure, right? From the downside, the pressure is there while the resistance remains flat, right? So this type of an ascending triangle, if you will, situation with a flat resistance and increasing lows, might be actually might be onto something, might be showing us some sort of like a decent breakout anytime soon. Still, 0.032 is our resistance to take a look at. Here's another shout out also for our partners at AZERO, ALEV0, with an excellent project right now. And the coin is kind of like interestingly refusing to go higher, right? It just crawls, seems to be crawling right there near the actually ultimate lows, the listing lows, with the highs being approximately at $2. We see this continued oscillation and continued rejection of the 200-day BPRO trend line, which is this grayish thicker line, and a flat, barely visible light gray color of a 200-day moving average, which is also flat, right? So there is no bull market in case of AZERO token. It seems to be rather moving in a fairly non-constructive range as the dominant tendency, unlike most of the coins right now, or maybe not most of the coins. However, there are a lot of coins and cryptos, like I said, that move higher, that move nicely on the predominant tendency. 200-day BPRO trend line, 200-day simple moving averages, they go higher, signaling the bull market and the short-term slowdown correction. It's still, for this particular case of AZERO, of our partners at ALEV0, they seem to be, not seeing much of a constructive price action over the course of the last couple of months, with a sequence of lower highs and low lows. If anything, however, like I said, we continue to move back and forth between those range boundaries, between the actual lows at about 75 cents all the way up to $2. And like I mentioned last week as well on the webinar, those seem to be those types of coins which basically have to give them some time. They have been cooking for quite a long time already, on the back end, not really letting the token reflect all their potential, all the fundamental intrinsic value built over the months. And once that starts catching up, with the market starts catching up basically with the fundamental valuation of the project, there seem to be often this massive rally tendency, right? And this massive rally comes so that it looks this massive consolidation, this massive kind of like a range bound environment seem just tiny in hindsight, right? This is what you typically see, where this massive range between 75 cents and $2, it tends to get super light, super tiny, super squeezed, just looking a little bit like this right before big rallies. So I don't know if that's the case. Like I said, I may be a little bit biased since they are incredible partners. Shout out to them. Still, I would take it with a big dose of caution and patience, right? Because things are not bullish yet. The token is not looking bullish at all. It's looking sideways. It's looking neutral, and it's oscillating in the lower range, in the lower area of this sideways period. So, even though things look bullish on the short-term basis, defined and reflected signal by the BPRO trend line and the BPRO, well, not the BPRO trend line, by the BPRO trailer, with 0.75, 0.76 as the local support. That might be not a bad idea for applying some class 3 orders for the buys, right? Typically, because as long as the markets move and oscillate within the fixed frames and the range, the trading boundaries basically right there seem to be providing decent of a bounce opportunity historically, right? So 0.75 approximately was this good buying opportunity, 0.65, 0.75. So just maybe they might be a good buying opportunity for those who play within the range. And here's another shout out to our partners at Soil with an incredible drift, positive drift taken by the RWs, by the tokenized real world assets. There's a decent fundamental intrinsic value in the project itself, and the token seems to be representing that overly well with a rising 200-day simple moving average basis with a key support at 1.12, while there is a cluster and a congestion of the moving averages at a high time frame trailer support resistance level indicated 1.78 as the key minute anchor to pay attention to, with the 50-day trend, which is this light grayish curve, giving us a little bit of a resistance at 1.9. So the congestion, the cluster of those levels may be anticipated so that it actually acts as this resistance region, right? So 1.7, 1.9 is something that would definitely be cautious in terms of any long positions open in that region, any bullish positions open. Otherwise, that bull market is present. The bull market is real, and it's just not my opinion. There's a inclining 200 moving average mode and shift. And things are looking bullish overall, while there is the slowdown taken from the end of March by the BPRO, the bearish BPRO trendline, bearish BPRO high time trailer setup right there, taking us basically quite lower, right? From the highs, there was a decent decrease, basically taking us 65% lower. So a decent discount in an overall rising tendency. Like I said, even though if it goes now to 1.10, 1.2, that might be indicative of a potential good buying opportunity for the polarity change principle, where the previous broken resistance turns into support. So if things happen, if things look really ugly, which is something that I wouldn't necessarily be the first one to expect, 1.10, 1.2 might be the region to pay attention to for many technical reasons. And this is a final and ultimate reminder about our hiring and job applications. We are hiring the business developers, project managers, trade leaders. And if you want to apply, leave your job application for us to consider, go ahead and head over to thebirbnest.com/hiring, thebirbnest.com/hiring. And it's you, just maybe, it might be you, we are exactly searching for about the business development, about the project management, and trade leadership for being a leader of Inverse Prop Desk, for our partnership with the Swiss-based hedge fund of Nomad Fulcrum to provide additional hedging. And well, that seems to be all for today. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you follow us on X. Make sure you follow us at thebirbnest.com for plenty of good, excellent content, learning education content for traders. And head over to thebirbnest.com/hiring to apply for a job. God bless you all. See you around, and bye-bye.